I don't know who you are, but welcome to the Irish Photography Podcast. Sit back, relax, and listen about cameras, gear, settings, stories, and all things photography. Join Dermot and Darren on Ireland's Best Photography Podcast. Let's go.
And you're very welcome to episode 167 of the Irish Photography Podcast. My name is Darren. I'm flying solo this evening. Dermot is actually busy. He couldn't join me, but I'm happy because I'm going to be joined by somebody who I first met back in February of 2020. All the way back then when Armageddon was after hitting the world, there was a thing created called Clubhouse. And all of a sudden, I was coming across a number of photographers and we could chat on a regular basis. And one of those such photographers was this gentleman that is joining me this evening. So, Kenneth or LeRose, I'm so happy to have you finally on the Irish Photography Podcast. How are you getting on, buddy?
Hey, what's going on, man? Excited to be here. Yeah, we met during, I love the way you put that, Armageddon.
Yeah.
And here we are. Yeah,
Here we are
past the
out
world
the other side.
And yeah, man, just excited to do the show. Talk more with you. We've never actually chatted one-on-one, really.
No, we haven't. There's always been other people in the room when we've been chatting actually in Clubhouse. So I know we've kept in touch and stuff like that, kind of back and forth with Instagram since then. But yeah, I'm delighted to, finally have you. I mean, the man, the myth, the legend, Kenny, on the Irish Photography Podcast. So you're very, very welcome to the show. And I suppose, look, we're going to get into a lot of different things here in relation to photography and also you. But before we get into all that, just in case somebody doesn't know who you are, who is Kenny?
Boy, I'm a deep soul, Darren. I'm a deep soul who likes to pick up a camera and document beautiful things. Landscape photographer, astrophotographer. I'm a teacher. I run adventure workshops. I've lived a very strange life before all this, and I guess still during, because I'm a nomad. I've been traveling in this little tiny Airstream that actually hooked up to solar right now, sitting in my kitchen / dining / living room and bedroom all at once, doing this podcast. So kind of an eccentric soul, I guess. But yeah, man, that's like a little glimpse. But I imagine we're going to go a little bit deeper here.
I'm sure we will. We will. And, you kind of touched on it there. I mean, outside of photography, I mean, look, we all go through different things within life, but photography is something I think which is really, really good for many, many people in many different walks of life. And it's always interesting how people get into photography. So how did you kind of get started in photography?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Going back, let's see, I've been doing photography for, I don't know, man, 8-9 years now.
Okay.
And I first got into it because I was a bodybuilder for most of my life. And I did a lot of modeling and worked with a lot of photographers. I don't want to sound like pompous or anything, but I worked with a lot of photographers where, I'd get in like this tip top shape and they'd photograph me. And it was like kind of the angles weren't so great. And so I'd say half the time I would walk away going, man, I bet I could have done a better job than that photographer if I was, and so I always just like had this feeling, that photography could be an art form that I would enjoy and accelerate in, because I could see that there was like some passion brewing there. And so one day, well, I ended up getting a camera as a gift, and it sat on a shelf and collected dust for a few months. And I had a Christmas party back when I lived in an actual house, and I invited people over, and they were my two buddies. They were fostering 2 kids, and they broke out their, I don't know, iPhone 2 or whatever they had back then.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we're gonna take some pictures in front of the Christmas tree. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, hey,
I got
put
this
those
thing,
iPhones away. Yeah, I got this legit Canon over here, EOS 70D, and I'm going to break it out. I'm going to take these photos. So, of course, it's in automatic mode. I know nothing about photography. Place the kids in front of the Christmas tree, and everything is dark. It's not doing what the iPhone does. It probably wasn't an iPhone 2. It was probably like a 6 or a 5. So it did some type of smart
computational algorithm. AI.
Exactly. And so I'm sitting there taking photos, and I'm like starting to sweat. I'm actually starting to sweat just telling this story, because it was such an uncomfortable feeling, because I got so cocky. I mean, I'm just a jokester, right? So I'm just getting cocky, but I'm not really.
Yeah, yeah.
And the photos were terrible. And so I pick up my iPhone when they're not looking, and I just take a couple pictures just so I have those, because I couldn't figure it out. And fast forward a couple weeks later, and Rodney Logan, he's a photographer in Vegas, he had hit me up and he said, "Hey, my mom's flying out. She wants to learn portrait photography." And I had worked with him in the past. He's a very talented photographer.
Okay.
And he's like, "Hey, can I use you as a model?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And I was like, "Well, hey, can I learn too?" And he shoots Canon. So he's like, "Yeah, of course." So he explained what the settings were,
Yeah.
ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. And that next weekend, I drove up to Big Sur. I was living in Vegas at the time. Drove up to Big Sur, and I took 3,500, 4,000 photos over the
Wow.
weekend. I just took photos of everything in sight at every different aperture, just trying to figure it all out.
Yeah.
And the next week, I just hit the ground running. I bought as much gear as I could, because I actually had money back then. And so
Mhm.
I spent it on all lighting and these big backpacks and as many lenses and all this different stuff that I thought would make me
All the
this
shiny things, yeah.
yeah, man. I was gonna become this sought out fitness photographer. And
Okay.
so back then, again, Darren, I had a really wacky life. I owned a gay strip club back then.
Wow. Okay.
And so I had a lot of, fitness friends, and a lot of my friends were Chippendales
Okay.
and women in the industry. I lived in a high rise in Vegas. I mean, it was like something out of a movie, but I had
I was
a
just
large
gonna say, yeah, yeah.
I had a large network of attractive people, for lack of
Okay.
better word, physically
Yeah.
attractive, and so I shot 3, 4, 5 people a week. I just became obsessed with getting better at it.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it wasn't until I started charging people, and I started kind of dealing with different personalities, and I realized, like, I didn't really like photographing people. I liked it,
Mhm.
but I didn't like the insecurities that came with a lot of the interactions.
Okay.
And so this is a very long-winded answer
But
to
that's
your.
it's I'm loving it actually, so keep
Okay, all
going.
right, great. And so 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 fast forward, I took a trip to San Francisco. Traveled a lot back then, but not for photography. And I brought my camera, and I started walking the beach. I forget. I think it's like Baker's. People who are out there know it.
Yeah,
Like,
I think it's
lines up with
Baker's
the
Beach, yeah.
bridge. Is it?
Yeah.
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 And so I'm walking. It's like a moody day. Little did I know the light was like super epic that day. But who am I? I don't know what epic is at that point.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I'm walking, and back then, again, I was a bodybuilder, so I see this like other meathead with a camera, this big beefed up guy with a camera, and it's kind of like the nod of like, "Hey, man, hey, we're both competitive. We both work out." So I see him, and he's got this big like filter thing. I mean, I know it's a filter now, but it's just
Yes,
this
of
big
course.
bulbous
Yeah.
thing. And I was like, "Hey, man, what's that?" And he explained it's an ND filter. It slows down the shutter speed so that you can take long exposures of the water. I'm like, "Oh, well, what does that do?" And so he's like, "Well, here, you want to try it?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So we put it on there, and I just set the camera down. I got the rock, it's actually an iconic shot that I didn't
Mhm.
know at the time, but it just kind of lined up. So I set the camera down and took the photo, and oh my God, man, it was like one of those photos that you see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was that moment
Yeah.
where it's like back then, Peter Lick was my icon. I thought
Yeah.
he was like this, he had all these
Demigod.
calories. He was the model of success, right? So
Yeah.
I would look at his photos. So I'm thinking to myself at that time, I'm like, oh my God, this is a Peter Lick photo. And and so it began, the obsession to learn how to shoot landscape, which was funny. My network of portrait photographers had no clue how to shoot landscape photography. I hit
Mhm.
them all up, and like nobody was able to help me figure this out. I didn't know there was workshops. I only saw YouTube, and like, YouTube is, yeah, it's not like having a mentor or
Correct. Yeah.
one-on-one.
Yeah.
So Yeah.
YouTube is like a textbook. You could learn all the text, but when you go into the field, you won't know how to use them. So having the actual knowledge in the field is priceless. And, that's the advantage of having, as you say, a workshop or a mentor or a workshop leader or somebody who can say, hang on, you may have learned this in a book and it says F11, ISO 100. But the light is different. So what are you going to do now? And that's where I think the key of it is. And like, it's interesting you say it there, to kind of, to go through the differences that are there from photography to, portrait photography, wedding photography, landscape photography, astrophotography, seascape photography, woodland photography. They're all different, but they all
Yeah.
use the same thing, which is the camera. And
Yeah.
it's funny you say about, the personalities and stuff like that. It's the complexities, I think, of photographing people, which is one that I shy away from, because I often said, I don't have to pose a rock. And you just mentioned that, there you go, lined up. There was the rock, there was the Golden Gate Bridge. And it's actually, it's quite apt in regards to that. That's why I was saying I was loving the story, because it is actually very pertinent to something that I would have experienced myself as well. So I think a lot of people would relate to that too. And when you say put on the filter and you look at something in the back of the camera and you go, holy, I took that.
Dude,
No,
yes, that's what it was.
yeah,
It was this is my cat, like this. I need that filter. Like, how can am I
yeah.
big enough to beat this guy up and take it and run? No, I'm just but no, I mean that was that
It's
mind-blowing moment,
nuts.
right?
It's nuts. It's nuts. And you've touched on it there, I suppose. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, what different types of photography have you dabbled with over the years? So, like, I'd say, portraiture photography is, you could loosely call it portrait photography, but if you look at the clients that you were photographing, it's fitness photography.
Mhm.
So what other aspects of photography have you dabbled in over the years?
Yeah, I got into and here's like the beauty of photography is the more people that you spend time with and you hang with, you start to get a taste for what they're photographing. And I think that's like a key point of when you ask that question, I think about all the different people that I've spent time with over the years
Mm-hmm.
that have inspired me to look at the world differently through my lens. And um, I mean, you name it, like you name a genre and like I've dove in and wanted to like macro photography. Like I learned I had to sell my macro. It was a hard sell to upgrade to a camera, but I had a 90 millimeter macro that I loved, man. I loved looking at the world in just this tiny little intimate way where you look at little
Mm-hmm.
insects and
Mm-hmm.
little little shimmers of light somewhere that become so interesting, yet in a world so vast you would just pass it by. You wouldn't ever notice if you weren't looking for it. And I love macro for that aspect. um Recently I've gotten into looking at textures a little bit more. I don't, I get inspired by seeing how other people capture textures because I don't think that my eye is trained to see things the way that some of these other really talented photographers are. Like Shane Bloom, I spent some time with him
Yeah.
recently and just watching him, I'm just like, what are you looking at, man? Like, and he's, oh, I mean, the Shane Bloom, well, I'm just, there's a few little textures right there. And so, um, it's really fun to hang out and just kind of see. It's not that you want to copy. You just want to see what they see so that you can have this entrance to this new world. Like you just want to be in the world that they're in just for a moment, get a
Mm-hmm.
glimpse
Mm-hmm.
into it. And so I've done a lot of sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I mean, look, you've done different types, but I wanted to add on that is, I think the advantage of spending time with others is quite rightly, as you say, even if it's a case you get a small bit of inspiration from them, or I often think about it in a slightly different way as well, is if you've never smelt a flower before, but yet somebody is always smelling flowers, the first time that you come across them, you're going, what's that smell? Oh, I've always smelt that. Oh, that's amazing. And now all of a sudden you're now looking at this and you're listening, you're smelling this and you're going, this is incredible. Now,
Yeah.
that's where I think we can be inspired by others. And I think Shane Bloom is a perfect example, because, he'll pick out something that nobody else will see, and he'll get something and you go, holy shit, that's amazing. And you could have been looking in the same direction for 20 minutes and he's just gone slightly to the left or to the right, and then
Yeah.
boom, it's there. So I think, spending time with other photographers, and particularly, as you say, like, if you've done all different types of genres of photography, it's clear to me which one has won for you, which is very similar for me, which is, outdoor photography. And like, tell me, what is it about outdoor photography that you love so much? What bit you?
That's such a good question. Yeah, what is it about outdoor photography? Uh, for one, I love a challenge. Um, Outdoor photography. So I think there's different types of photographers out there. I think, well, we all know, like, everybody gets into something for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's the creativity. And I felt like when I was photographing people, I could be creative, but also not everybody saw things the way that I wanted them to see it, which is natural. And like, that's
Yeah.
normal. You can't
Yeah.
expect that. With nature doesn't argue with you. They don't, um, you know, nature just changes constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's moments that you just won't ever get back. It's light that you won't get back. There's nature photography. It's just beautiful, and I love the challenge of going to places that I've never been, I've not seen, I've not scouted, I've not. Part of what gets me hyped for photography is creating things that I haven't seen before, which is why you won't see a ton of iconic stuff from me. I just I'll go, and I don't think there's anything wrong. I think some of these places are beautiful. Like, I've never been to Delicate Arch or Horseshoe Bend, or these really popular
Yeah. Hot spots.
places.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not because I'm being snobby or snooty. It's just that I'd rather, for a photography adventure, I'd rather go somewhere that's a bit less charted, and I I just feel more creative when I can do things like that. Anyway, that's kind of yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? It's interesting, I suppose, just to kind of carry on from that or expand on that slightly, is no successful artist has ever been given a canvas with another image and said, okay, put your own spin on that. They've always created their own view.
Mhm.
And, these honeypot locations, Kenny, they're beautiful, and they're a honeypot because they're beautiful and they're a honeypot. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's the creative mind that we have that says, okay, I don't want to be the same as the photograph that I saw 100 times previously. I want to find something and forge my own path and create my own vision and try and see the world that I see it and put that into an image, which is always a challenge as a photographer. But
Yeah.
when you can do that, and when you have, as you said, quite great light, moody atmospheric conditions, a fantastic subject, then you have to learn how to compose that shot. Again,
Yeah.
everybody can rock up with a camera phone and go head height, there you go, bang, shot,
Right.
brilliant. But for you to be able to capture that shot in the landscape, that's what I love about it, is that, the nature doesn't have a bad side. Nature doesn't go, okay, hang on a second, let me fix my hair before. Nature
Right.
doesn't care, right? You
Yeah.
you rock up, you got the conditions that you're never going to have the same conditions again, and that's
Right.
fantastic about the outdoors. So, like, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, it's something that I'll always try and do. I'll go to the honeypot locations for sure because I don't
Yeah.
have my version of that shot. Fine.
Sure.
But I'll often, more often than not, 90% of the time, I'll go somewhere and there could be a group of people over here photographing what they're supposed to photograph.
Right.
And I'm gone this direction because
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to find my own, try and find a different composition. So I think, from the outdoor point of view, the landscape, you will never, ever find two shots the same. Well, okay, you will, but you won't find them exactly the same, let's just say, unless you're
The-
stood right next to each other at the same time.
yeah. The creative ones, you won't. Yeah. There's,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's the thing. Like, I guess I just probably because I don't sell a lot of my fine art.
Hmm.
So I don't really look to kind of beef up my iconic shots because I know they sell. They sell for a reason. They're spectacular,
Yeah.
and I would much prefer going to places like that with friends or a significant other or someone, like, experiencing those places and just have my camera. I mean, I'll take photos because I love to take photos, but
Hmm.
but it doesn't fuel my passion for photography.
And you know what? The other side of it too is that the landscape will always look different. Different times of the year, different seasons, and
Mhm.
such like that. So you can go back to the same rock, inverted commas, and you'll get a different shot each time. And something that I look at your photos in awe on a number of the ones that you've taken, since we've virtually met a number of years ago. But some of your images that you take, you go, okay, you know what, I can understand where he is and where that is. But where it completely changes from the landscape, which is something I think you're phenomenal at, is when the sun goes down and
Oh,
when it's nighttime. So you've got exactly the same landscape that's there during the day, but now all of a sudden you've got this vast universe that's above
yeah.
it, that's always there. And like, astro is something that I think it's fascinating. It's something that I've dabbled in, but I get frustrated with it because I don't have all the shiny gear like trackers and stuff like that, where I've got other
Yeah.
guys that are using the trackers. But you can still go out with a camera and get astro shots. And it's amazing. People go, well, they always up there. Those stars always there. Yeah, they're always there, but you're probably living in a city, so you're not going to kind of see them and stuff like that. So how did you get started then in astro? Because it is a leap, let's just say, to go from landscape or nature or daytime photography to then go nighttime. So was there a eureka moment as well that you kind of went, Jesus Christ, how did that happen?
Yeah, there was a guy when I lived in San Diego, his name was Ivan. And I remember he wanted to go to Anza Borrego. And to get to where he wanted to go, he needed a Jeep, and I had a Jeep.
Okay.
I never shot well, I shot the Milky Way. All right, so I'll just tell a real quick funny story. I'm up in San Francisco. I'm up in Marin County, up in the hills, visiting a friend who's got a house up there. And I'm walking outside of his house where there's street lights up there. Like you're up on a hill.
Yeah.
Um, it's pretty mountainous, but you're in the city. Like you're and I was, again, obsessed is a word that I use a lot, and I use it in a good way. I think it's healthy to be obsessed with things that you're
Hmm.
passionate about. And
Hmm.
so I was obsessed with trying to photograph the stars. I didn't know the Milky Way is what I was going for, but I just knew that like there was something up there that I wanted to photograph.
Hmm.
And so we're going for a walk outside his house, and we're going in between street lights. So we're walking away from the street light and aiming it at the sky. And I'm just like, man, where are the stars? Like we're not in the street lights. And I didn't know what settings to use. So I've literally just walking around in between street lights, pointing the camera up, not seeing stars in San Francisco. On my way home, driving, I lived in Vegas. Was I think I was back and forth, but I was going to Vegas, and there's this exit called ZZYYXX.
Yeah, yeah. I've
You know
seen
what?
that
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen something about that recently. Yeah, yeah. There's an old swimming area in the very end of down that road. It was in a swimming area in the '60s and '70s or something like that.
Maybe. I have
Yeah.
no idea. I just, as I'm driving home, my head's out the window and I'm staring. I'm like, oh my God, there's so many stars because I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, I gotta pull over and like try and take a photo. And so I pull over, I walk, and there's this cool little fence. I'm just looking for some kind of leading line into the sky.
Hmm.
And so I shoot at 400 ISO and I click it, and there's stars. Oh my God. I go to 800 ISO.
There's
Oh
more
my God, there's
stars.
more stars. I went to 1250. I went to 1600. I called my girlfriend at the time. I put her on speakerphone. I'm like, baby, I got these stars. Like there's this like line of stars. The Milky Way was out. The core was out. I didn't know. And I'm just like, this is crazy. I have like, this house light that's illuminating this fence just well enough to see it. And I have the Milky Way. And I'm just like,
Wow.
and like I'm on the phone with her, and I'm just like, babe, I'm gonna go 2000 ISO. Watch. I'm gonna show you all these, but I'm gonna go. I go 2000. I go 30 seconds, and I'm just like, oh, it's even brighter. It's just
Yeah.
we're just going like she's getting the play by play, and she's like, oh, that's great, honey. This is great. And so that was actually my first Milky Way, and so leading back to Ivan when I was in San Diego, he was like, hey man, I'm like, yeah, I think I photographed the Milky Way before, but he's like, yeah, come with me, like. it'll be a win-win. I'll show you how to shoot the Milky Way.
You
You can
got the
take me in
Jeep.
your Jeep. Yeah. And so he did, and we shot, and the editing, and I composited, like, I think myself in there. It was probably the worst Milky Way images you'd see on the internet, but
Worked
yeah,
for you.
man. From that moment, that was when I learned it, and then over time, I just I just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed going out at night by myself. I enjoyed just clicking and getting, like, it was like that first time, the play by play with my girlfriend. That was it man, if I can go back to that feeling, I would. That was
Mm-hmm.
something really
Mm-hmm.
special.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still special now that I know what I'm doing when I'm photographing it.
Yes.
And the thing, like what you were talking about with the shiny tools and the trackers. I mean, I only track a few times a year, sometimes if I'm hanging out with other people, but it's man, you can do so much with just camera. I know people even do with their F4 cameras, and
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, don't I, I don't want anyone to ever feel discouraged that they don't have the proper gear, because I promise you, if you have a camera and a lens, you can go out and shoot the Milky Way if you're in a dark enough
Yeah.
place.
Not unless you're between two streetlights, then don't try that.
Well, yeah. Oh my God, man. It's so silly looking back. It was because I was so serious. We were both like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Why isn't this working? They
I
say go
tell
to a dark place.
I tell you an interesting one now was when I first kind of discovered astrophotography. There's a very good photographer that I know through the internet, but he's based in the Canary Islands, and he was taking some phenomenal shots of the Milky Way. And I remember messaging him, kind of go, Jesus, we never get that here in Ireland, I thinking that we were so high up that in the latitudes that we wouldn't get to see it. But the main reason why you don't get to see it here is because it's mainly cloudy for 90% of the year. So, that's when I think that's where the frustration for me comes in, is because I go, okay, it's forecasted, it's going to be a clear night. Okay, great. And I make a journey to somewhere, and all of a sudden you might get 5 minutes of clear skies, and then in come the clouds. So there's
Yeah.
a difference, I suppose, when you kind of have it there, and you got clear skies. You're, Vegas desert area. You're not going to have it. San Francisco as well is another example, I think, which is I couldn't get my head around when I was in San Francisco. I was there a number of times because I had a friend of mine living there, but every morning it would have fog come in, and then by 12 o'clock, gone, just
Yeah.
burnt off, gone. And then you got your clear skies. And then in the evening time, okay, and the fog then comes in. But then you go across the Golden Gate Bridge up to where you were mentioning a second ago, and you can have your inversions. And I'm like, my goodness, man, this is just, So yeah, I think I agree with you. I mean, like, Astro is something that it's fascinating and it's highly addictive. Even though you've got the same sky, it's not going to change. You can get an interesting foreground. So let me ask you a question. What do you prefer? Do you prefer astro or do you prefer landscape? Oh, and why? By the way, you can't just say
Yeah.
one. I,
Oh,
I want to
and
know
why?
why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the why is always important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that's like choosing between kids. I don't have
Yes.
kids, but I can imagine.
Yes.
I think there's just different parts. I don't think that I can choose, because I love the night sky, and I think capturing places at night is really really special for me, because I think it goes into kind of like drops down into the rarity
Okay.
aspect,
Yeah.
where it's just something that less people seek out, because a lot of people don't want to go out at night alone, or it's cold, it's dark, the boogeyman's going to get them,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the reason
It's
is.
Tuesday. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think if I this is gonna probably surprise you, but I think if I had to choose one, I would choose landscape photography.
Okay. Okay.
Um, if I could never do one or the other ever
Mm-hmm.
again, I think landscape, just because you've got sunrise, sunset, and you can do it all year round. Where, I mean, astro you can do all year round, but I don't know, man. I love capturing light,
Mm-hmm.
and how light changes and conditions, and sometimes at night that can be a bit of a challenge, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was going to be my rebuttal for you. If you had said that you'd preferred Astro, I could have said, what about all the beautiful light that you get during the day, all the different variances of light that you get
Yeah,
during the day, and how much light itself can infect your soul when you're
yeah,
out there. And all of a sudden you get this light and it's like,
I
I wish
know.
I had my camera. I do. Okay,
Yeah,
it's great, So yeah, I think I agree with you. Look, from my point of view as well, I think the daytime or outdoor landscape photography is far more varied from an opportunity point of view.
yeah,
And as you say, you get sunrise light, you get morning light, you can get
yeah.
moody light, you can get
Midday,
foggy
yeah,
light.
stormy. Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
Look, man, it's close. It's not a landslide by any means, but if
Hmm.
I've got a gun to my head and I've got to choose, then that's my decision. And
Yeah,
I guess,
and you stand by it, and you stand by
yeah,
it. Okay. And on that bombshell, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a very, very quick break, and I'll be right back. I've got more questions I want to get more into about, your fantastic Airstream there. So yeah, we'll be right back after this. If you're enjoying this episode of the podcast, why not jump over to iTunes or Spotify and listen to the back catalogue that we have of some great episodes where we talk about photography, gear, and some excellent guests along the way. Thanks very much for listening and for watching. We'll see you on the next one. And you're very welcome back to the Irish Photography Podcast. So, Kenny, like I said there in the first part, I want to get more into the detail of your life, and you've lived as a nomad, as you said earlier on, for the last 5 years. That's incredible. And it's something that a lot of people would love to do. But tell us, firstly, about that journey. How did that journey start?
yeah, don't do it. Um, no, I'm just kidding. Uh, how did it start? It, I was chatting with this girl. She had just gone through a divorce. Her husband got the RV out of the divorce. And so I followed up with, oh, so he's like traveling around. She's like, no, he just lives in an RV park in San Diego. And I was like,
Okay.
oh, that doesn't sound so fun. And she goes,
Yeah.
hey, you travel so much for photography. You should buy an RV and live on the road. And I was like, what? I'm like, no, like people actually do that. I had no clue. Again, this is going back like 5.5, almost 6 years. So this um, nomad life exploded during the pandemic. But before that, it was just, and I'll go into how different it is because I think that's a interesting trans um, interesting transition into life, like just how things have changed. But going back, so she had recommended me to or say that I should go and live on the road. And so I asked her a few questions. She said, yeah, you can camp places for free, you can pay for. I'm like, what? Like, no clue. And so I only owned a Jeep at the time. And so I looked at RVs and I just couldn't swing it financially. I just couldn't, like, what was I going to do with my Jeep if I get an RV?
Hmm.
How big? Like, am I going to be able to get to places? And I didn't know that my Jeep could tow anything. I didn't know there was any towing capacity, but apparently there's 3,500-pound tow capacity. So when I
Nice.
found that out, because I went to an RV place, they said, yeah, you can tow 30. I'm like, oh, I can? Okay, let's see how big of something I can get at 3,500. And yeah, they're not very big at 3,500 pounds. But every time I just started Googling, I saw this. Everything that I liked was this Airstream. And again, like I had no clue what an Airstream was.
Hmm.
Um, so fast forward, this sounds like maybe like a transition of like weeks, of going back and forth. No, 3 days later after that conversation, I bought an Airstream in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Wow.
I drove out there, never towed anything before. They hitched it up to the back of my Jeep and I pulled out and I
See
left
ya.
with it. And 7 days later, I was living on the road, and that was
Wow.
it. Yeah, so it really wasn't much planning. I didn't know that people actually did it, and
Wow.
when she said that, it just made sense. And I was like, yeah, it sounds kind of cool. All right,
I'm up for
well,
that.
we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And so I've been figuring it out ever since.
And you mentioned here about with the Airstream. I mean, if I'd ever wanted to get something, it would be an Airstream. Why? Because it's shiny, it's cool. It looks like something from the future.
Yeah.
Like, like, how is it? How has it been? I suppose really in relation to spending the last 5 years in the Airstream. Has it been everything that you wanted it to be? Has there been areas you go, do you know what? I'm missing this, or
Uh,
what?
yeah. Um, there was definitely a honeymoon phase.
Okay.
I'd say the first 2 years, the first year and a half was kind of that honeymoon phase. I felt super cool because all my friends wanted to, like you go through and everybody wants to travel with you because I have an extra bed. So this is a little 16 foot. It's less than 100 square foot. It's like
Okay.
96 square feet inside here. So it's super tiny, but it does have a bed in the front. It's got a dedicated bed that stays down all the time. Like right now, the front is a table. That's where you're sitting on.
Okay.
And yeah, I wanted to get something that was photogenic, and Airstream was it. I wanted something that was reliable and holds its value. This is like kind of like what Harley Davidson is to motorcycles,
Okay.
Airstream is to travel trailers. It holds its value. I bought it for 42K, and I could probably sell it now for 45K,
Wow.
and yeah, so it's been a good investment because of course I bought it before the pandemic, before the boom.
Yes. Yes.
And after the 2 years, though, I started, you know, working. Well, the whole time I've been working on my photography business and trying to be self sufficient from that. And
Hmm.
um, I think, I got to a certain point about a year and a half, 2 years ago, where I just miss community. I miss a sense of belonging, something that
Hmm.
feels like mine. Oh, this is great. I'm on BLM land right now, so I don't have to pay to be here. But
Hmm.
also, like after 2 weeks, which I'm getting close to 2 weeks, if I stay longer, like I'm wondering if I'm going to get a knock on the door.
Yeah.
So I don't. There's just like if I stay in someone's driveway or if I stay in a parking lot or all these different places in between, because it's not like I'm in some glamorous location 24/7. There's
Yeah.
times where I'm just trying to skate by, I'm just trying to like parking lot hop and go to the gyms and do that kind of stuff. And so that can get tiring. I also don't have running water on here in
Okay.
here because I chose to go dry just so I can go into temperatures that are sub freezing. I don't
Sub-zero.
have to worry about, yeah, I don't have to worry about the tanks or anything. So I'm dry. Electricity is at a minimum. No Wi-Fi. I'm using my hotspot right now for this podcast and using solar energy
From
for
above.
to run the laptop. And yeah, man, there's just a sense of community. Like, when you go to the grocery store and you say hi to your favorite cashier, you make sure you go in their line so you can say hello. And
Yeah. Yeah.
going to the gym, just seeing regular faces, even if you don't say anything, there's just like, you give the nod, like, it's just like, oh yeah, it's you again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you just
Yeah.
you just don't really have that, or at least you don't have it at first. What is kind of interesting is that, now going into my 6th year, I've kind of put this routine. I don't live a life of routine. I never have. Even like, believe it or not, with the bodybuilding, like how strict it was,
Hmm.
I still kind of like improvise
Okay.
as I go.
Okay.
But the places that I go now, like, okay, there's a local coffee shop here where the lady knows my name and she named a bowl after me at there because I was such a regular and I
Okay.
liked something. Yeah, so it's called the Kenny Bowl. So you can actually go there and order the Kenny Bowl. And so, part of the reason why we're just kind of going into, let's see, like the past 6 years have, I've started to create that community in certain areas
Hmm.
of the country. So it is kind of cool. Like I go back to certain gyms where I'll hang out for a few weeks. I'll see the familiar faces again. I'll see people at coffee shops and yeah, some places. There's like a bunch of places that feel like home now,
Hmm.
which is really interesting. But it still doesn't take the place of like a permanent. And I really do miss like the amenities of electricity and water and Wi-Fi and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
all those, like shower. I've been bathing just like out here in the rocks over here with this like 3-liter shower system that
Okay.
is set up, and that's how I'm bathing out in the middle of nowhere. So just running water on your face and your body, and it's these things that we take for granted that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that I
When,
don't have a couch to lay in, man, like to sprawl out and just like sit there and have some big screen that you can watch Netflix on or something, you know, that's
yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
That sounds so exciting to me.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Like you said, there was a couple of things there were coming to mind. Like number one, you know, when you say in relation to you know, fitness and stuff like that, is it the Planet Fitness group that you're part of, or that you go to the different fitness centers wherever you park, or what, or do you just go to any random one?
No, I have an Anytime Fitness. So similar
Okay,
like Planet Fitness, but yeah, Anytime Fitness membership, and they've got them all over. So
yeah,
that's where I
and
shower.
and that
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say, because that's handy then. Because if you're like, I would look at what you said to me there. Yes, it can be a pain in the ass. Yes, you don't have a couch. Yes, you don't have a big screen TV, but you also have now a number of different areas, as you say, that you've got multiple groups of people
Yeah.
that you can now rock into and go, you know, I know 5 people here, I know 10 people here. So you've got 5 homes as opposed to one home. But I think there's probably one big one, right? I suppose, and you know, we take for granted is that if I've got a base, which I do in my own house, my friends can call to me here because they know I'm always going to be here. Whereas for you, it's going to be a different situation. Well, when is Kenny rolling back into town again? Oh, in 3 months' time. Okay, can't call over him today to tell him my news or to watch a show or whatever it might
Mhm.
be. So yeah, I think like you probably have the advantage that you've got a number of different areas to now call mini homes, if you want to call it that, you know. But like, you know, you have got one person with you, and I say a person because, you know, we treat these people like us, which is your
Yeah.
best friend, Sabu, your dog. Tell us about Sabu, because that is something I think which helps you, I imagine, to be grounded when you're out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah, man, he's great. He's my best friend. Let's see, man. I found him on the freeway in Vegas.
Wow.
Well, a friend of mine found him, and then, long story short, I was fostering other dogs at the time, and my girlfriend at the time, she was studying full time nurse, in school full time, and so she just couldn't like take on another dog, and and so I knew I wanted him, man. It was like love at first sight, you know. I just
Yeah.
felt so connected to him, and I felt so bad for him because he was severely abused.
Wow.
Um, I mean, he had so many issues when I got him, and he didn't eat in the same room as me for the first 2 years that I had him. I couldn't
Wow.
get him to jump on the bed with me for the first 3 years. He didn't trust me.
Wow.
And I'm like the same way that I am here. Like I'm always just like
Chill.
I don't have like temper. I don't yell. I don't,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
He's never, you know. I'm very uh, patient with him.
Yes.
So I would just sit there with him for hours. You know, I just sit there on Instagram or Netflix and watch on my phone, and he would be pressed up against a corner as far back as he can get from me, and I'd be, you know, 3 4 feet away from him, and you know, every half hour or so I just kind of move a little bit. Purposefully, just kind of like lean over towards him, you know, not look at him, act like he's not there, but like kind of lean over, and you know, he would just get real stiff and was petrified. And
Wow.
so, um, man, he turned into like the greatest dog ever. He's such a great companion. He's a little bit too trustworthy now,
Okay.
to the point where like I think it's great. He's comfortable in his own skin, but he's actually developed like this bark and this type of like aggressive behavior towards men and people. So I actually can't take him on the trails the way that I used to. And
Oh,
when I
okay.
say like I used to bring him everywhere. I used to I don't know if I should admit this on here, but I put a service. You can cut it out if you think it's not. But I put a service dog vest on him because we would travel all across, and in like some warm climates, so it'd be 90 degrees outside, and I had a service dog vest, and I would bring him to the gym. He was trained that as soon as my keys dropped to the floor, he would lay down and he would stay there. He wouldn't go say hello to anybody. He wouldn't. He would just
Wow.
stare at me. He would stare at me the whole time. As soon as I pick up the keys, he stands up. As soon as I start walking, he walks. As soon as the keys drop, he lays down. And,
Wow.
people would come up to me all the time. They'd be like, man, how's your dog? So I'm like, he's a service dog. Yeah. Or he's not. I don't,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't
yeah.
have a
It was
disability.
convincing. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was really so that I can get him out of hot climates, and he was so well behaved. And I talked to other friends, so I got the blessings. There was two guys that used to go to my gym in San Diego, and they had legit service dogs. Um and so Sabu would always be in there, but my friend owned the gym there, so it was actually a guy I was
Okay.
in the room from. So I never like had to put a service dog vest on. Like Sabu was just allowed to be in there.
Yeah.
And so I asked the other guys, I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, I'm going to be living on the road. Like, how do you feel about me? Like, Sabu's not a service dog, but if I got a service dog vest, like, do you frown on like how do you feel about that?
Hmm.
And the one guy was just like, dude, Sabu is more well behaved than most service dogs. He's like, I wouldn't care at all. He's like, it's the dogs that are yapping or misbehaving and not listening to their owners with the service dogs that I have an issue with. But yeah, I mean, if you're gonna slap one on so that you can bring him into places so that he's more comfortable, then yeah, man.
So be it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay, cool. I got a blessing from a guy with a service dog. Okay, cool. We're in. And
Hmm.
so we did that the first few years, and then he started to get that comfortability where I think that like these regressed feelings of abuse, because there's no question about it that he was abused. And so I think he's like becomes very comfortable in his own skin, and almost to the point where it's like, hey, you can't hurt me now, rough, like here I
Yes.
am.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let anybody hurt me ever again, because I know that nobody can now. and
Hmm.
um
Hmm.
and
He's
so
more comfortable in his own skin now, and knowing that he has his own voice and that he has you as well. Because your role. I've done a lot of learnings on dogs over the years, right? But your role is that you are the alpha. He's with you, and he knows he's safe with you and such like that. But when he becomes and says, "I don't have to worry here because I've got Kenny, and Kenny's going to look after me," now he's kind of thinking, "Okay, well, I can look after myself as well now as well." So
yeah,
yeah, yeah. But
yeah,
that's not a bad thing, but it's something that I'm sure you are conscious of, because you can't bring him everywhere you want to bring him, because
can't do
people
it
don't.
anymore.
Yeah, and you're not thinking about the dog as such, but you are thinking about your dog because he's your best friend, and he's looking at me right now. Hi, Sabu. Um, but the big thing is that you have to be conscious about other people, because other people will go, "Oh my God, look at this dog here. He's barking at me, and he had this dog," and all of a sudden you're bringing attention to it. I get it
Yeah,
completely, but
yeah.
you know,
Unfortunately, it's so 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 the beginning. There he is, Sabu. In the beginning of our the first few years, it was great. He was not a burden at all. um like, he just went everywhere. But now that he can't, life has changed a bit to where we've got to stay in cooler climates. Like, I have to be more aware of our surroundings, because I don't have the luxury of taking him in places, because it's just, I'm never going to be that guy who has a service dog
Mhm.
vest who brings a dog that's misbehaving or barking or doing something that
Absolutely.
he shouldn't do. And that's
Yeah.
um yeah.
But you know what? The best thing about having a dog is that a dog doesn't care what type of day you've had. Every time you come back home, they give you unconditional wagging of a tail. It doesn't matter. There's no other human out there that could do that. And they don't attach any emotions to the thoughts either. It's like, he's home, okay, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and they're happy and stuff like that. And then, after most dogs, after 5 minutes, they're like, okay, I can chill out now. And then they're just relaxing. But it's that greeting which is priceless. And
Yeah.
even if you go and you're gone for 5 minutes, you come back in, you will be warmly greeted again. And
Yeah.
then that's the beauty of a dog. So, I love dogs. I think dogs are fantastic. I think they've got a phenomenal personality, and they've got a lot of traits as well that most people, as in human beings, would wish to have,
Dude, for
because
real.
you know
So simple.
dogs are yeah, they're brilliant. They're brilliant. Okay, so I want to jump back into photography, right? And something about your photography, never mind saying how great it is and the locations and how skilled and you are in relation to fine art photography, but
Thanks.
no, you weren't happy with that. You just said, you know what, I want to go another level. And you mentioned earlier on about being obsessive and passive and passionate and everything else. Yes, but you take it to another level. So every image, is it every image or most images? You accompany an image with a phenomenal set of words, poetry. So tell me, man, where did that come from?
Well, thanks. Yeah, it is every image. So
Every image, okay.
every image has a photo attached to it, or I drew the line as I'm doing more like reels and time lapses, where I'm just like, all right, these are like, I put a lot of time into the time lapses and stuff. I'm like, we're just gonna let these just speak for themselves. And
Yeah.
but yeah, so what had happened was, years ago, I've been doing the poems now for probably like 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
And yeah, so quite a while. Oh, sorry, that's my carbon monoxide. Sabu hit it. There's gonna be one more beep. There it is.
That's okay.
So yeah, like 5, 6 years ago, trying to figure out Instagram and trends and things like that. You just, when you first get into a creative space like this, you try and figure out your way. What are you going to do? And the captions, what are you going to do in the captions? Are you going to tell a story about how you photographed it? Are you going to tell a funny joke? Are what are you going to do? Are you just going to leave it blank and throw some hashtags? And what people were doing is they were using quotes. And I remember I had a friend who she would always put quotes, and I was like, oh, let me try that. That's cool. And then when I did it, it didn't feel right for me. It felt
Contrived.
I didn't want to use I didn't want to use someone else's words to represent an image that I created. And so
Okay.
I started writing really terrible poetry. I started writing words and thoughts that sometimes rhymed and sometimes didn't.
Okay.
And just like anything in this world, if you do it enough, you start to find a certain rhythm and pattern to it, and you become more comfortable with it. You fine tune that skill, and now they all don't suck, and that's pretty cool. and and so
As a result.
yeah, so they and I don't read. I don't really read much. I don't know a thing about poetry. I don't know what
Okay.
I don't even know what kind of poetry that I write. I don't know if it has a label, or it's just something that I just liked where it was going. And now there's like a set of like syllables and rhymes that I do, and there's just a style to it that I couldn't tell you if it exists. I'm sure other people do the same, but it didn't come from someone else. It just came from natural progression of me writing and liking, the different style.
But maybe just like the lady that named the bowl after you, there will be a form of poetry created as well and named after you. How about that?
I doubt that what I'm doing is anything new to the poetry world, but
Well, it's definitely new to the photography world, and I think, look, like at the end of this podcast, I'll give people links and everything else where they can check out all of your work. But not only look, I encourage people, don't just look at the images, read the words for the accompanying image, because you are very considerative in relation to it, and you're quite philosophical as well on some of them as well. When I read it through, and I go, okay, there's a meaning within this, and photography is something which is phenomenal because it's colorful.
Yeah.
It's it's the world, it's outdoors and stuff like that. But some people are visual, other people are kinesthetic, they like to touch it and stuff like that. Other people are auditory, like to hear it. But when you read the words that are there, it actually, for me, takes that image another level. So well done in relation to putting those words together, because I think it's something which is definitely unique. And so I suppose, look, with that in mind, like, you are taking your photography to another level, and you are adding your own aspects of you in your photos and stuff like that. Something else as well that you have really added to, and I think it's something which is very important, that we kind of alluded to earlier on, is another side of your life. So you're a workshop leader, and you take people to some absolutely pretty insane locations. Tell us about that side of your life. How did that start? And tell me more about that currently.
I mean, how it started was living on the road and had to figure out how to make money. So,
Okay. True
so
story. Yeah.
yeah, and just teaching just sounded really fun and exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know whether I didn't have it's so funny because I started a business uh, with someone, and we set up our first workshop in Oregon, and we're like, okay, well, let's see if we can make some money teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And 6 or 7 people signed up for it, and we were like, holy shit,
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna have to teach.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause, like, you don't expect
Mm-hmm.
anyone to sign up for it,
Mm-hmm.
and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh crap, I hope they don't want their money back because we don't know what we're doing. We
Mm-hmm.
just, like, have pretty work, and we've never taught. So our first workshop, we just went above and beyond. I mean, we tacked on an extra day at the end because we didn't get the Milky Way during there. So
Okay.
most of the people were able to stay, and um, just the responses that we got were just great. Like some of it was, hey, I've taken 3-4 workshops at this point, and I've learned more in this one than we have. And I'm like, holy crap! Like people actually learn stuff. Because you question your ability if you've never done something, especially when
Yeah,
people are
absolutely.
paying
Yeah.
to learn from you. Like, what do you have to teach?
Mm-hmm.
And the reality, and this is what I tell people all the time, is that no matter what level you're at, you can always teach people. You can always show people the things that you do. And like I learned so much from my students just from watching them, and they'll have little tricks just
Yep.
in the classroom, hotkeys and different things that they do. And I'm just like, oh wow, yeah, I can incorporate that into my workflow. And
Mm-hmm.
so as the years, fast forward now, I think this will be the 5th year going into workshops, and I feel quite a bit more comfortable teaching.
You'd
And
hope so after all those
yeah,
years anyway. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, just kind of fine tuned. And I'm going to make this sound commercialized, but it's because I believe 1000% in what I do, and I see the changes from people who come into the workshops. Like my goal, I want people to take better photos than me on the workshop. I want them to excel. I want them to
Mm-hmm.
learn. Like there's so much that I can teach when I see people, even really phenomenal photographers walk through those doors, and in the beginning it was it's a little like, why are you here? But now it's
Mm-hmm.
to the point where like, I know why you're here, because you know that I have something for you, and we may not be quite sure what it is, but by the end, and we have something for each other. I mean, you're going
Yeah.
to learn, I learned so much through teaching, and so that's another part that is fulfilling for me. And it's funny because I went through a really tough year this past year, not looking for sympathy here, just had a lot of like business fallout and just some really crappy stuff that
Okay.
happened on the back end of things. And honestly, man, it broke me. I've never
Okay.
been broken in my life. I've never felt so down ever.
Wow.
And like, I've gone through life just like everybody else. I've had crappy things happen, and but yeah, this last year just kind of broke me. And I was convinced that going I never wanted to do photography again. I never wanted to teach. And this isn't me like looking for uh I wasn't out there like telling people this. This is, these are my own thoughts. These are like,
Yeah.
I, this is truly what I believed. Um
Mm-hmm.
and and it's funny because I had a workshop coming up in Big Bend, and we have people signed up, and I'm dreading this workshop this past March because I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? Like, I can't fake. Like, I'm not a faker. I can't
Mm-hmm.
sit there and have a smile and act like I'm excited about photography when I'm not. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't ever want to do this again. I wish that I wasn't even doing this workshop. I can't give the money back. Like, I'm gonna have to figure this out, man. And the students come, and I'm playing the hey introduction, hi guys, yada yada yada. I'm going through the roles. I'm just like, okay, this is gonna be tough. Oh shit, we have to go to the location. I'm gonna have to start teaching. Oh man, okay. And we get out there, and I kid you not, man, within 15 seconds of being out there, I was like, oh my God, I love this. This is the greatest gift on the planet to give to people, is bringing them to beautiful locations, but not just that, but giving them a creative outlook that they wouldn't have had otherwise, and then teaching them some step-by-step processes to capture those images and then bring them into the digital darkroom, into the classroom. And it was so interesting, man, because I was so low that I couldn't see how much I loved photography and teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't see it, and I was
Mm-hmm.
convinced. And thank God that I had that workshop, or I'd probably still be in a funk. I'd still be in that same spot. But 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 teaching really is something that is a gift. And I think when you find a great mentor and a great teacher, and at whatever level you are at, I mean, even my level, I hate the way I just said that. Like, I'm not,
Well,
we're, I don't mean it. Yeah, dude. No, no, no. I am not one of those people. I think we're all equal, and we're all creative in different ways. I guess the accolades that I've gotten that make people believe that I'm at a different level than they are. There's just, there's, uh, I have the confidence in teaching. So I think at that level, when you have that confidence in
yeah,
teaching, like I
yeah.
know how to level people up. And, but like, I'm getting leveled up, and it's almost like, man, like how powerful that is to find other people, because there are other people in like business, there's that excel in so many different areas, that I'm just like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, even when I was bodybuilding and competing, coaches, like, I knew what I was doing. I was competing at a high level, but you just constantly want to be pushed. You want to be
Yeah,
pushed. And
yeah.
and so anyway, so yeah, so I take people to really pretty places, and we have fun, and they learn a crap load, because that's what I love. And not the
I,
greatest teacher in the world, but get the job done.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, even reading between the lines there, Kenny, what you do is you give them honesty and you give them heart on the sleeve. This is exactly what we get. This is what we're going to achieve. And you achieve that for them. And I think, you get so many people, and not necessarily say in photography, but just say in business, that they're bluffers, that they talk a good talk, but when push comes to shove, they can't walk a good walk. Whereas, you're doing both, and you're helping people in relation to that. And it was something that, I kind of, as I always kind of do, is, I knew you anyway, but I said I'd do some more research before the podcast. And I came across a quote on your site, which actually epitomizes what you just mentioned there, I think, which is, surrounding ourselves with other creators of all skill levels, as well as other highly motivated photographers, helps to push boundaries to unlock more of our own potential. And that, to me, is exactly what somebody would attain from attending a workshop with you, because you know a workshop is something, I think, which people can underestimate, because you might get nervous before people arrive, but people are also nervous before they arrive, because they're going, what if I'm the worst person that's there, even though they might have been taking photos for 5 years? What if they talk in a language that I don't understand? Or what if I show all the what ifs, what ifs, what ifs? It's human nature. It's who we are. But surrounding ourselves with like-minded individuals helps us to grow. So I think that's something that, an honest approach to a business and to a workshop and to feelings and to emotions, because don't forget, photography is also an emotion. There's an emotional connection to this black thing that we have in front of us that allows us to capture what we see in the landscape. So, people that would attend the workshop, I can be sure of it. I mean, even people that don't even attend the workshop, that will go out shooting with other photographers, will always gain something from somebody else. Looking over your shoulder, seeing what they're doing. Oh, okay, that's an interesting. That
Mm-hmm.
wasn't taught. So more and more people, I think, should go on more and more workshops. And I think it's something that, you'll always be learning. You're never, ever, ever, ever stopped learning, I'm sure, like, for argument's sake, with your experience that you have, and I said, you know what, Kenny, come on over here to Ireland, I'll show you the wild Atlantic way. There'll be things that you'll learn from me here because it's my home ground. It's what I know that you're not experiencing and living and breathing it every single day, so there's always opportunity to learn. And I really, I enjoyed what you're mentioning here about, the honest approach. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, everybody suffers from a thing called imposter syndrome. And it's like, I'm not good enough to do this. And, what if they see me for who I am? And
Sure.
you are good enough to do it. And it's human nature to
Okay.
question it.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say, within 15 seconds, bang, and you're off.
Yeah.
It's like stage fright to a certain extent. You know what I mean? That when actors go on the stage, they're to come and boom, and they're gone. You can't stop them. So,
yeah. How long did it take you to start this podcast?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, like I could turn around to me and go, you know what? No, I won't bother. Sod that. Let's give it a go. Let's dive in and we'll learn as we go. And I mean, I'm at 167 episodes now.
Yeah.
And I still go, do you know what? I have another guest on here. Okay. And I always try and make it different, but guess what? I get on the podcast with you, or it could be Shane Bloom, or it could be anybody. And I go, okay, I'm chatting to a human being.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing for me is we're all humans. We have a connectivity and a connection as human beings. And, I have a phrase I've said for many, many years, and it's my podcast, so I can say it on it, is, at the end of the day, we all piss and shit the same.
Yeah.
Simple. We're human beings. We may have airs and graces, but we're human beings at the end of the day. So yeah, I loved that, man. That was absolutely, spot on. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a final break here, and I'll be right back because I've got 3 staple questions that I ask every single guest, and I'm really looking forward to hearing yours. So yeah, we'll be right back after this final break. If you're enjoying this episode of the podcast, why not jump over to iTunes or Spotify and listen to the back catalogue that we have of some great episodes where we talk about photography, gear, and some excellent guests along the way. Thanks very much for listening and for watching. We'll see you on the next one. And you're very welcome back to the final part of this week's fascinating episode of the Irish Photography Podcast. So, Kenny, like I said, I've got 3 questions that I ask every single guest, and I'm really excited now to hear yours. And the first question I have is a funny photography story. What's yours?
Didn't we already go over that with the Milky Way in San Francisco?
Yeah, we did, but I bet you have another one.
Let's see. All right, there was one night in Lake Tahoe. I think it was by Bonsai Rock, and I shot Milky Way there all night.
Okay.
I want to say it was at 6400 ISO, and I slept in my. Did I have an Airstream then? I can't remember. I think I did have the Airstream. So I think I rolled out of bed and shot sunrise and went down. And I shot the whole morning. It was a beautiful sunrise in 6400 ISO. I was so tired. I didn't change I didn't see that it was so funny because it was like so blown out and bright. I'm like, why does it not look the same as weird? And
why am I getting a 1/10,000 shutter speed? What's going on here?
yeah. That was Now that you say that, that's what I was remembering. I'm like, why can't I get long exposures of this water? Like I was like, this is so weird. I'm not getting any long exposures, and it's like blue out. Yeah, man, that was.
Well, you know what? I think stuff like that happens to people more often than they care to admit. But thank you very much for, telling us in relation to it, because I'm sure that people will learn from that. If you are out taking astro images the following morning, wake up and go, ISO, bring it right back down.
Click 100. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And the second question we have is, what gear do you shoot with? Canon, yeah? Canon. Like you said, you shoot Canon, yeah? Canon for life, yeah?
No, man. I started with Canon when I didn't know anything. And then and I was sold this A7 when the A7 first came out. I was sold on that. mirrorless. It was, yeah, oh, I know you're showing me your Canon. I mean, his Canon camera. Okay, just to clarify. No, man, I'm Sony. I've got the A7R3, so I'm still kind of like living with an older model that's beat to hell. And then I have the A7S3, which I use for time lapses. I've gotten a lot into time lapses, so that's the gear. Nisi filter, slick tripod. That's my plug. You know, if you need any, hit me up. That's
Okay.
I stand behind those products, and I work with them. So yeah.
And what lenses do you shoot with?
My favorite lens is the 12 to 24. I see the world very wide, so I love to use distortion to elongate elements in the foreground, to elongate elements out
In the distance.
yeah. And so yeah, 12's my jam, man. I love 12.
Well, you know what? It's very interesting because I thought you were going to say 70 to 200 for some reason, because, you know, the beauty of a 70 to 200 is that you can take a photograph in a well-known area and people wouldn't necessarily know it's that area because you're picking out a small thing in relation to it. But, you know, yeah, I mean, 12 is my jam and it's a good jam. Tastes well on toast. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of gear, I suppose we have a regular segment here, which is called a VSP. It stands for a very solid product. It's a product that you won't leave home without. It's always in your camera bag. And if you could put your name to it, you would put your name to it. What's yours?
Man, always in my camera bag. It might not be. I mean, there's always food in my bag.
Okay.
So I think for me, you know, I still have this bodybuilder mentality where I've got to eat, and I probably eat way more than most people that I know.
Okay.
So there is always a protein bar or two on standby in my
Okay.
bag. So I won't leave home without that.
And you know what? A protein bar is important as well because it's going to help you. You know, it's going to help you on a long hike. It's going to be better than a bar of chocolate, let's just say. You know, it's going to have more of a function. And as you say, from the bodybuilder point of view, you want to have something that's going to help your body, you know, to repair and recover from a long walk and stuff like that as well, or a long hike. So yeah, very good VSP. The first person to ever have a protein bar as a VSP on the podcast.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I'm surprised. I thought everybody's brain is always wired to food, but I guess, you know, an extra camera bat, but yeah, man, it's or liquid death, man. I don't know if you ever, I don't know, you probably don't have this out.
Is it water?
It's water, man. It's naturally flavored sparkling water. It looks like beer and it looks like it has some kind of caffeine in it or stimulants, but no, man, it's just water.
The elixir of life.
I've become addicted to liquid death, even though there's no addictive stimulants that we know of.
Well, you know what? It's a good addiction. Water is a very fine thing to have, and you know, get rid of your bottles of cola or soda, as you guys call them in the US.
Yeah.
Replace with water all day long, all day long. So there's my 3 questions. Really, really good answers. I suppose the only final things really, and I can't believe we're at the very end of the podcast already. I really enjoyed the conversation throughout, but you know, 2 final questions I have for you. Number 1 is, what's next for you? And then after that, where can people find information and find you online in this mad world we live in?
Man, if I could tell you what's next for me, that would be lovely. But I literally don't know where I'm going to be sleeping, you know, multiple days from now. So,
Okay.
but I am working on. Remember we were talking about that, you know, am I ready yet? I don't really know. So that YouTube thing has been lingering around, like day in the life. So many people want to know what it's like living in an Airstream, doing this. Like I've been doing it for so long. Nobody ever sees the inside of my Airstream. Nobody ever, I never share that side of
Lift the
my
veil.
life.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's not interesting, but everyone always says that it is. So I'm like, all right, I need to do a deep dive and go into that. So, so YouTube is probably my next tackle. Time lapses have been time lapses and hyperlapses. I've got some cool stuff that I've been learning on behind the scenes that I want to do with some nighttime events that are coming up.
Great.
So I think yeah, just that kind of stuff, and of course just fine tuning, teaching, and eventually putting a tutorial out there where people can actually buy and
Brilliant.
maybe make a little bit of money. You know, I gotta
Yeah. Got to buy those protein bars.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Do you know what? That sounds exciting. And it's something I'd recommend you to do. I mean, YouTube it's an interesting world, let's just say.
Are
And
you
it's
on there?
something, yeah, I've released a video on YouTube every week since September 2017.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, and like here's the interesting thing when I say it, that's what I was going to say to you is, like I've been, talking with you, and you see my images and stuff like that, and everything I do, I always link to my video, but you go on YouTube, and that's the interesting thing is because, like for me with landscape photography, there's a plethora of people out there doing landscape photography,
Yeah.
but for you, if you're going to be doing, living in an Airstream, number one, that's different. Time lapses, hyperlapses, number 2 and number 3, different. So I'd really recommend, dive into it, man, because it is something that it's
Yeah.
quite enjoyable. And you know what the other part I find even more enjoyable is putting the video together, because I enjoy that other side of creativity and putting a story together, the whole lot cohesively the whole way through. So
Dude,
definitely
it's
recommend
great.
it.
I'll send you the clips and you could put all my videos together. This is perfect.
No problem for a nominal fee. No problem
Yeah.
whatsoever. Yeah, that's fine. But no, I think I definitely recommend that. So, and for now, I suppose before you create your YouTube channel,
Well, I've got
or
it
what?
already.
Okay, so where can people find information on you?
Yeah, so KRL photo, Instagram KRL_photo. If you look up, I think KRL photo on YouTube and pretty much any other social platform. I try to dig my claws into, Twitter and Vero, and there's another. I mean, the list can go on and on, as we know.
Yes.
So
Yes.
wherever you're at, look for KRL photo, and if I'm on there, it'll be there.
Perfect. Well, I'll put links anyway into the show description, and I'll tag you as well when I'm putting these up on Instagram and Vero and stuff like that as well. So people that will see you from the Irish Photography Podcast side of things, and also from my own as well. But they probably know, you've a lot more exposure, I think, as well, to come when you start adding in your additional things as well. So I think that the future is bright for Kenny. I think it's going to be really, really good. Yeah. Dude, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I think, it was a long time coming. I mean, like I said, February 2020, we first started chatting, and I remember at the time you said, yeah, I'm just parked up here in my Airstream, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. I think it was on the Friday night pints or whatever one I would have had there on the clubhouse, but that now has long since gone, and Twitter seems to have taken over on the Twitter spaces, but I can't seem to get into that. I think it's different, but yeah, it's been a long time coming. I've really, really enjoyed it, Kenny. Thank you so much for coming on.
Same, man. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thanks a million. And if I'm ever over that side of the States, I'll definitely give you a shout for sure.
Yeah. We'll shoot some Astro. I'll let
Absolutely.
you borrow one of my
Oh, shiny. Yeah. I don't suffer from gas, but I think that's I'm sometimes do, but I don't suffer from gas overall. So yeah, maybe you never know. I'll borrow your tracker for sure. All right. So look, thank you very much to everybody for listening. Until the next time, like I said, I've been Darren. Thanks very much for tuning in, and Schlag the phone.
Hey guys, if you dig what you're hearing, why don't you jump over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating, and don't forget to share with your friends. With all that done, we'll see you next week, and remember, keep shooting.